Are we rolling? Let's do this. Last time people heard from me, I was reporting on trillions of dollars in unaccounted for tax money. That is trillions with a T. Trillions of unaccounted for tax dollars. Trillions in unaccounted for military spending, so-called military spending. Trillions unaccounted for. No matter how many times I say that, it just always sounds so absurd to say that. Trillions of unaccounted for tax dollars? How can that possibly be, right? It's surreal corruption. I mean, 1 trillion is 1,000 billion. To accurately report on government corruption, to accurately report on systemic corruption, to report on the corruption of our tax system, not just wasted, stolen, and unaccounted for tax dollars when it comes to so-called military spending. It's across our entire tax system. As I will cover in detail, most every government agency is now completely overrun with corruption. And the corruption has gotten so bad, if you accurately report on it, you are going to sound like a crazy person. It's surreal corruption. However corrupt you think the government is, when you really dig into it, it's much worse than you can imagine. New shocking details come to light all the time. The unthinkable has become normalized. I have hundreds of detailed examples, literally hundreds of examples of shocking, mind-blowing corruption. I'm going to get into deep detail on all of this. There are definite trends, reoccurring themes, and fundamental dynamics involved. I will break it all down and lay it out for you. We've gathered so much evidence, it's hard to know where to begin with all this. Billions lost here, billions lost there. It all adds up quickly. It's real hard to know where to begin. We should probably start with a basic example. Here's the latest example that I was just reading. I was just reading a new Inspector General report from the Social Security Administration. The Social Security Administration Inspector General, the SSAIG, the Social Security Administration Inspector General just revealed that billions of dollars, that is billions with a B now, billions of tax dollars have been lost to Social Security fraud over the past year. And this is nothing new. Billions of tax dollars are lost to fraud within Social Security every year now. Now, this is just one example of many, just the latest example. So in this most recent Inspector General report, it says at least 10 billion was lost to fraud last year. That's at least 10 billion lost to fraud in just the past year in one agency. And it happens every year in many agencies. It happens across our entire tax system, across the board. And at least 10 billion in one agency in 1 year is just a drop in the bucket compared to what is going on in so-called military spending. It's surreal corruption. It's mind-melting. I mean, the 20 trillion in unaccounted for military spending, so-called military spending, that information comes directly from the Department of Defense's own Inspector General reports. There was one example, one annual report. In one annual Department of Defense Inspector General report, there was 6.5 trillion, with a T, 6.5 trillion in unaccounted for military spending. 6.5 trillion in unaccounted for military spending in 1 year. Do you see what I mean by surreal corruption? It's beyond imagination. How can that possibly be, right? So one of the challenges that we keep running into to accurately report now on systemic government corruption, if you accurately report on it, you are going to sound like a crazy person. You can read quotes verbatim from government inspector generals and people will think you are crazy. They won't take you seriously. That's how surreal the corruption has become. This is a significant part of what I've been doing. I read government inspector general reports, and then I investigate and research what they are reporting on. I flesh out the context behind inspector generals' publicly available report summaries. You know, what actual journalists would do if there were any real investigative journalists left in this country. Excuse me, I'm shaking things up over here. I'm drinking a protein shake. I'm going to need some energy here. We are going for a deep dive here. So when it comes to trillions in unaccounted for military spending, it's not like these are just accounting errors. There are many corresponding instances of outrageous fraud and corruption all over the place that corroborate and substantiate them. We have hundreds of examples that we will go through. It's hard to know where to begin with all this. We already have people who worked in the Pentagon, who worked at the Department of Defense Finance and Accounting Service, who say the books are cooked as standard operating procedure. People who spent their careers working at the Defense Finance and Accounting Service say there are plugs, thousands of plugs, thousands of transactions per month with no supporting documentation. Thousands of transactions per month with no supporting documentation. People who spent their careers working at the Defense Finance and Accounting Service said money is spent all the time without congressional appropriations. Money that Congress has not allocated. I mean, we have direct violations of the U.S. Constitution. Colossal, blatant violations of the Constitution here. What more needs to be said to get some serious accountability? Some serious investigations going here. Some legit accountability. It's surreal corruption. The more you look into military spending, the crazier it gets. We've even had defense secretaries. Defense secretaries are in charge of military spending. We have had multiple defense secretaries publicly admit that they have no idea what is happening with military spending, that there are hundreds of financing operations throughout the Pentagon that lack oversight. They don't even know how many financing operations there are. Did you get that? There are hundreds of financing operations throughout the Pentagon that lack oversight. Robert Gates, when he was defense secretary, Gates said that there were unaccountable fiefdoms operating throughout the Pentagon. Unaccountable fiefdoms. Those are Gates' words. He said that publicly at the American Enterprise Institute. But the mainstream media and both political parties just ignored him. It's also absurd. Gates said he couldn't even get answers to how much money was being spent, let alone what it was being spent on. Do you understand the absurdity of that? The defense secretary can't get answers on how much money is even being spent in the first place. Looks like there's a back door into the U.S. Treasury here. A wide open back door into the U.S. Treasury. Don't you think? Do you think? Please think. Think it through. Please think it through. And then, of course, we had Donald Rumsfeld when he was defense secretary. He said in a speech at the Pentagon, he called the Pentagon a black hole where U.S. tax dollars disappear by the trillions. Did you hear that? A defense secretary called the Pentagon a black hole where U.S. tax dollars disappear by the trillions. These are defense secretaries and Department of Defense inspector generals reporting this. And still, there are no serious investigations into what has been happening to trillions in taxpayer wealth. Year after year, trillions of dollars are disappearing, and it just keeps getting worse. Department of Defense inspector generals have reported over 20 trillion is unaccounted for now. And they are ignored. It's surreal corruption. People don't understand the impact that this has on their lives, will have on their lives. The inevitable consequences of all this, it's horrifying. Our future has been set on fire. Our near future. The scale of corruption is too large for the average person to comprehend. I have so much to say about all this, but the point we want to make now, the point we want to make up front from the beginning, one of the challenges that we keep running into to accurately report on systemic corruption now, if you accurately report on it, you are going to sound like a crazy person. People don't take you seriously. To accurately report on corruption now, you will sound like an Onion article. It's surreal corruption. Truth is much stranger than fiction these days, right? Reality is much stranger than fiction. Real news is much stranger than fake news. Real news is much more surreal than fake news. It's no wonder that people are confused and don't know what to believe anymore. We are confronted by surreal corruption. And again, to be clear, it is not just in military spending. It's happening throughout the entire tax system now. The cancer of corruption is now malignant and it's spreading rapidly. So anyhow, I read these Inspector General reports, whether it's from the Department of Defense Inspector General or the Intelligence Community Inspector General or the Social Security Administration Inspector General or the Environmental Protection Agency Inspector General. Every single government agency has their own Inspector General whose job it is to detect and investigate corruption. So they produce report after report of mind-blowing corruption, and no one really pays attention to them. The mainstream media ignores them. Most politicians completely ignore them as well. This is where you can clearly see how real journalism is absolutely dead in this country, and how utterly corrupt both political parties are. Government inspector generals reveal trillions of dollars worth of shocking fraud and mind-boggling waste, and the mainstream media and both political parties just ignore them. It's so absurd. These are government inspector generals. Inspector generals are an absolutely vital accountability mechanism built into the core functioning of our government. And they are ignored. Our government is fundamentally, systemically corrupted. The chain of accountability is no longer functioning. It's an all-out smash and grab imperial heist, a global imperial heist. The American people are defenseless. We will go into deep detail on all this. The evidence is there if you have the patience and attention span to go through it. We have done our homework. There is no defending what is going on. They can't defend it. That's why they stay silent and try to cover up and classify everything. And that's why they do what they can to silence people who talk about it and to suppress it and censor people and to hack people. They can't defend it. That's why we are super saturated in divide and conquer propaganda. That's why the mainstream media is now a divide and conquer distraction machine, spewing divisive rhetoric 24/7. The mainstream media is now a divide and conquer distraction machine. We'll prove this as well. We understand the fundamental dynamics of the mainstream propaganda system very well. Bottom line, it's imperial divide and conquer 101. Unleash divide and conquer psyops. Make the local population fight amongst themselves while you rob everyone blind and bury the nation in debt. Divide and conquer imperialism 101. All right. I don't want to get too deep too fast. We need to be disciplined in our approach. We've done our homework. We need to be as disciplined as possible. I can't get all worked up and move too fast. We need to be as methodical as possible so we can effectively overcome divide and conquer propaganda to unite and defend the American people against predatory global imperial interests who are looting this country and setting our future on fire. Let me chill and refocus for a minute here. I'm moving too fast. One step at a time. People need context and detail first. We need to lay a solid foundation first, flesh it out, make the case clearly in a way where the average person will understand it, in a way where the average person can relate to it. That's the mission here. Got to be strategic, one step at a time, layer by layer. So just a vibe check. For a general overview, this is the general reoccurring theme. This is the general feeling you get over and over when you're digging into surreal systemic corruption. You see corruption in a particular government agency and you think, oh my God, this is incredible corruption. Then you think, wait, come on, this couldn't possibly be right? So you start digging into it and it just keeps getting worse. You just keep peeling back layer after layer after layer of unfolding corruption, exponential corruption. It just keeps getting worse. You fall down the rabbit hole of surreal corruption and you go through the looking glass, and the looking glass turns into this kaleidoscopic funhouse mirror. It's a clown mirror of corruption. Surreal corruption blurs out, spirals out, expanding as it unfolds around you in a surreal Fibonacci spiraling oscillations. I mean, look, I don't want to sound all silly here. I don't mean to make light of it. This is no joke, folks. No joke at all. But this is what we're up against here. Surreal corruption. All right. Strategic here. Come on. Now, let me be more precise. Let me focus in more now. Let me be more technical in my reference here. This is what I mean by surreal corruption. Before diving deep before diving too deep into the deep waters of military spending, before diving into the abyss, let's just take this latest example that I started with, the $10 billion that disappeared from Social Security this year. It's not the best example, but it will give you the general point. Let's at least start with that basic example before we get into the more egregious, shockingly unbelievable examples. Keep it basic. The Social Security issue will give you a general overview, basic idea. You can begin to see common themes that keep reoccurring and get a lay of the land here, a lay of the surreal landscape that is spiraling and unfolding around us. So 10 billion lost to fraud in Social Security in just 1 year, right? Now, you think to yourself, oh, come on, that can't be. 10 billion lost to fraud in 1 year? How can that be possible, right? So then you look into it and you find out, oh, this is actually at least 10 billion. As it turns out, the 10 billion is not even a complete view into the overall fraud in just Social Security in just 1 year. So it's actually more than 10 billion. Well, wow, how much more? Well, to be honest with you, no one is sure exactly how much more. What? Whoa. Then you find out this happens every year. Wait, what? Come on. We're losing billions to Social Security fraud every single year, year after year. That's unbelievable, right? But wait, it gets even worse. It's like a bad infomercial, right? But wait, there's even more. So then you see that this problem has been known about for years. And even worse, then you find out that solutions to the problem have been known for years as well. But they never implemented them. Solutions are known, but they don't get implemented. What? And this is a reoccurring theme. Solutions are known, but they don't get implemented. Then you think, come on, that can't be right. That can't be right, right? I mean, come on. They've had a solution to the problem, but the solution was never implemented. And now they just keep losing at least 10 billion tax dollars a year to fraud, and they're not fixing it? You've got to be kidding me. Come on, that can't be real. That can't be happening. Am I getting punked here? Is there a hidden camera somewhere? I mean, then as you're digging even deeper into it, peeling back the layers, looking further into that particular instance of corruption at that particular situation, as you're beginning to fall down the rabbit hole of surreal corruption, peeling back the layers, it just keeps getting worse. Then you find out that not only are we losing billions to Social Security fraud every year, and not only do we have solutions to the problem that aren't being implemented, then you find out, in addition to all that, oh, wait a second, oh no, it turns out that 3 trillion, there it is again, trillions with a T now, 3 trillion from the Social Security Trust Fund, 3 trillion from the Social Security Trust Fund that we now need to pay retiring baby boomers back. Yeah, well, as it turns out, that money has already been spent elsewhere. What the WTF? Now, try to keep context here. 1 trillion is 1,000 billion. So 3 trillion is 3,000 billion. So 3 trillion that people, 3,000 billion that workers paid into the Social Security Trust Fund. that we now need to pay back to retiring baby boomers now. 3 trillion that we now need is gone. What? How can that be? Then, as everything around you begins to blur out into a surreal landscape, then you say, but wait, where did that 3 trillion go? Then this white bunny in a top hat hops up to you, comes bouncing up to you and says, hee, we don't know where that 3 trillion went. Oh man, this is reality now. I mean, the bunny in the top hat was a silly joke, but the rest of it is legit. It's 100% legit. Somehow, sadly, as hard as it is to believe, to accurately report on systemic corruption now, if you accurately report on it, you are going to sound like a crazy person. So, to sum up this one of many examples that we'll be exploring, to sum up this one of many government agencies that corruption has run amok upon, to sum up a reoccurring theme, to sum up the new normal, we are losing at least 10 billion a year to Social Security fraud year after year. And people have known how to solve the problem, but the solutions don't get implemented. And on top of that, politicians have already taken 3 trillion from the Social Security Trust Fund that we now need. And they spent it elsewhere on God knows what. Who knows? Whoops. Shh. Don't tell anyone. Shh. Politicians have already taken 3,000 billion from the Social Security Trust Fund that we now need to pay people back with. Now that baby boomers are retiring en masse, now that baby boomers are retiring by the millions, we have to pay people back now? But we already spent their money. Shh. Where did it all go? Who knows? Shh. And we're losing an additional 10 billion per year to fraud. So you see, as it turns out, that 10 billion is just the icing on the surreally corrupt cake. Is your mind melting yet? This is only one small piece to the surreally corrupt puzzle. And oh, by the way, overall, when it comes to our national debt, we have already spent more than 21 trillion over budget. And we are already 21 trillion in debt. And that's not even accounting for an additional what is it? Another 21 trillion or so in so-called military spending that is unaccounted for? So you can see in the grand scheme, what's another 3 trillion to throw into the surreal fire? It's all good. No worries. So you see, in this context, in this overall situation, after all, at least 10 billion lost to fraud in 1 year in one agency, ho hum. We're dealing with tens of trillions now. So 10 billion, please, we can't be bothered fixing that. That's just another drop in the bucket. That's just a minor rounding error in the surreally cooked books. It's just another day in the surreally corrupt land of the free. Just yet another mind-blowing Inspector General report. What else is new? There are so many examples. It gets worse than this, much worse. We are just easing in here. There is so much more to cover. The Social Security Inspector General report is just the latest example that I just read. Just yet another Inspector General report to throw into the surreal fire. The whole thing is beyond imagination. It's surreal corruption. The only way I can honestly, accurately articulate it. Surreal corruption. Our tax dollars have been disappearing by the trillions with a T, disappearing by the trillions through mind-blowing fraud and mind-boggling waste. It's happening in many agencies. There are examples that are much more egregious than at least 10 billion tax dollars disappearing this year from just Social Security. At least 10 billion in Social Security fraud this year. That is just a tiny tip of the iceberg compared to what is going on in, let's say, so-called military spending. Our tax dollars have been disappearing by the trillions with a T. I mean, again, 1 trillion is 1,000 billion, right? Do you get that? Can you comprehend that? It is difficult to seriously wrap your mind around numbers this big. 1 trillion is 1,000 billion. We need to let that simmer and sink in for a while. This is context that we really need to get in our mind from the beginning here. Please think it through for a while. 1 trillion is 1,000 billion. Write that down. Print it out. Hang it up on the wall. Say it 5 times before you go to bed and 5 times when you get up in the morning. 1 trillion is 1,000 billion. Seriously, please. Let that simmer for a while. Put it in your mental crock pot. Let that slow cook for a while. Think it over. Every time you drive over potholes that are too expensive to fix, think that over. 1 trillion is 1,000 billion. People can't comprehend corruption on this scale. That's the problem. That's what we're up against here. There is no frame of reference that the average person can relate to when you deal with this much money. People don't understand the impact, the huge impact that this will have on our future, on our lives, on our daily existence, the huge impact on our overall quality of life. People don't get it. We are talking tens of trillions of dollars here, people. 1 trillion is 1,000 billion. Our future has been looted. Our future has been set on fire. Rome is in flames. It's been torched, looted, plundered, raped, and pillaged. Rome is in ruins. It's like mafia accountants and corrupt economists got together and got all jacked up on coke and steroids and concocted some wickedly evil mad scientist science experiment, some surreal mathematical extraction formula, some quantitative voodoo derivative of some sort that sent our tax dollars through the chop shop, our tax dollars sliced and diced times E equals MC squared off into the infinite, surreally corrupt future. I mean, it's hard to put all this surreal corruption into a frame of reference that people can grasp. It's hard to do it without sounding like a crazy person, right? I know. I sound crazy now. I know. It's not easy to maintain sanity in this kind of surreal landscape. It melts your mind. We're melting minds already, and we're just getting warmed up. Literally, this is just a warm-up recording. Truth is so much stranger than fiction. Real news is much more surreal than fake news. It's also absurd. It's a banana republic on steroids. It's straight up global imperial plunder. The U.S. Treasury is being looted in unprecedented fashion. It is global imperial plunder that is beyond imagination. We have details, so many examples. There is so much evidence. It's happening in broad daylight. It's happening in plain sight. Or more accurately, it is hidden in surreal sight. It's surreal corruption. Salvador Dali could not capture the corruption that is unfolding right now. It's happening across our entire tax system, across most every agency of our government. I've been doing the best I can not to get overwhelmed by it, to be as disciplined as possible, to be as methodical as possible, so I can accurately articulate it as concisely as possible in a way that a large number of people can understand it, to accurately articulate it as concisely as possible in a way that a large number of people can understand it. That's what needs to be done. That's where the action is at. To accurately articulate it as concisely as possible so a large number of people can understand it. I mean, if the government is rigged, if the legal system is rigged, I think it's time we just take all this evidence all the way to the court of public opinion by any communication means necessary, by any communication medium possible. What do you think? What do you say? Say something, people. Speak up. The hour is late for optimistic outcomes. You know, this is what I now realize. This is why I'm making these recordings now. Once people can understand the fundamental dynamics of the systemic corruption, once a critical mass knows where to focus their attention, focus their efforts, we can fix this. The hour is late, no doubt. But once people can understand the fundamental dynamics of it, we can create the change that we need. We can absolutely fix it. We now understand the fundamental dynamics of it in such detail. We know what's happening. We know how it's happening. This is what I'm going to lay out in this series. I have been investigating, researching, analyzing, and reporting on systemic corruption for over 20 years now. I'm getting old. For over 20 years now, I have watched closely as corruption incrementally increases year over year, election cycle over election cycle, presidential administration after presidential administration. Corruption just keeps trending upward. Tick, tick, tick. Up it goes, consistently, incrementally, tick, tick, tick. And now we have hit that exponential curve. We have technically entered peak corruption. I'll flesh out what I mean by peak corruption throughout this new series. Yes, have I mentioned that? This new series, which we are doing right here, right now. We're just getting warmed up right here, right now. Welcome aboard the magical mystery tour. On the trail of our missing trillions, much, much more to come. You can consider this episode 1, much more to come, providing that I can actually get this vital information out. Providing that I can actually get this vital info out. As many of you know, last you heard from me, while I was reporting on our missing trillions, my website kept getting hacked. Last you heard from me, it's been months since you last heard from me. I've been MIA for a while, forced into exile yet again. I've been MIA for months now. Well, I'm happy to report that the rumors of my demise have been greatly exaggerated. Perhaps. I even believed those rumors for a while. Well, the jury is still out on those rumors, actually. We're deliberating here. Demise or rise? What shall it be? We shall soon see. Anyhow, last you heard from me while I was reporting on our missing trillions. As many of you know, my website kept getting hacked. I couldn't keep it online. I was being censored and suppressed. The whole thing turned into a very costly, time-consuming, energy-sucking, outrageously stressful situation, to say the least. It turned into an absolute life-consuming nightmare. My entire life got turned upside down for a while. To be bluntly honest with you, I nearly lost everything, literally. I've fought some serious battles in the past. When you spend your life investigating systemic corruption, you come up against some really powerful interests. But this time I had to fight as hard as I've ever fought. Harder than I ever thought I could possibly fight, just to get back here, to this point, with you, right here, right now, with you. Be here now. Be here now. I'm a little battle weary, battle tested though. I've had to take on a stoic approach, an amor fati mindset that says obstacles and adversity fuel your potential. That's become a mantra of sorts for me. That's the mindset we need here. Obstacles and adversity fuel your potential. So, to make a long story short, I don't want to bore you with my personal drama here. Perhaps it'll be a boring documentary someday when I'm not here anymore that no one watches. No. I ain't going out like that. Anyhow, as it turns out, obstacles and adversity do indeed fuel your potential. I now have people helping me to fend off hackers and censorship. I am very grateful for them. Very grateful. There are still some good people in our government, believe it or not. People who truly care about the overall well-being of the American people. They are definitely a shrinking demographic within our government. I am very grateful for them, though. Very grateful for people that I would call, in general, constitutional patriots. That's what I would call them in general. Constitutional patriots are definitely a shrinking demographic within our government. I'll go into further detail on what exactly I mean by that as well throughout this series. For right now, I'll just say this. This is the biggest, most pivotal divide across our government right now. On one hand, there is a shrinking demographic of people who truly care about the overall well-being of the American people. And on the other hand, there is a growing demographic, a large number of people who are in our government who are there just so they can cash out to the global power elite, to the global imperial elite. There are a large number of people in our government who are there just so they can enrich themselves. People who are in our government just so they can cash out to the global power elite, to enrich themselves at the expense of the American people, to enrich themselves at the expense of the American taxpayer. However, and I want to be clear about this, there are people who still truly put the overall well-being of the American people before cashing out to global interests. And those people who put the interests of Americans first and foremost, those good people, at least the diverse cross-section of those people that I've had interaction with, those people, much more often than not, they consistently bring up the Constitution. I find that people who care about the greater good, those people consistently bring up the Constitution. And I've come to think of them, to see them as constitutional patriots. And some of them openly consider themselves to be that. Overall, though, many of them, to a person, they consistently, in their own way, they bring up the need to enforce the Constitution. And when you look at the most harmful overall corruption that is occurring, enforcing the Constitution is a vital piece to solving it. So that's the big pivotal divide in our government right now. And it has nothing to do with Republicans versus Democrats. At this point in the process, when the government is fundamentally, systemically corrupted, the Republican versus Democrat dynamic is secondary, a distant second at this point. I will explain what I mean by that in detail. I don't want to trigger anyone here. I know how heated the partisanship is these days. We are all saturated in divisive rhetoric these days. We are super saturated in divide and conquer propaganda. As I briefly mentioned before, divide and conquer propaganda is something that I will be focusing on. A main theme throughout this series, a main theme here will be overcoming divide and conquer propaganda to unite the American people. My ability to overcome divide and conquer propaganda to unite the American people, my ability to do that is the biggest reason why I've had success. And it's also a major reason why I've been continually hacked and suppressed as well. By focusing on systemic corruption, because corruption has become so bad, by focusing on systemic corruption, I have supporters with opinions across the entire political spectrum. I have just as many conservative supporters as I have liberal supporters. I have just as many libertarian supporters as progressive supporters. I have supporters who are lifelong military and intelligence community officers. And I have supporters who are peace activists. I have supporters who are grandparents and great-grandparents, and I have supporters who are in high school and college. I have supporters who are religious, faith-based, and spiritual. And I have supporters who are atheists. I have supporters with opinions across the political spectrum, across every demographic, from all walks of life. Corruption has become so bad, every demographic is now impacted by it. At this point, and here's the main point, at this point, the most pivotal dividing line is between those who are in on the corruption and those who are not. And 99.99% of the population is not in on the corruption. This is what I'll be proving to you, demonstrating for you. When the government is overrunning corruption, everyone feels taken advantage of to varying degrees, and rightfully so. There is plenty of well-justified angst to go around. No one wants to have their tax dollars stolen or wasted. No one. No one wants to have their water supply contaminated. No one wants to breathe toxic air. No one wants to have a toxic food supply that makes us bloated and sick. No one wants to pay twice as much for health care than any other country pays. No one wants a rigged government. Most people don't want a rigged economy and a rigged stock market. Most people want a fair playing field. One set of rules for everyone, right? That is a bedrock American principle. One set of rules for everyone, right? Can we agree on that? That's our common ground here, people. And it's exactly what we need right now. One set of rules for everyone. Accountability. That is a bedrock American principle. Accountability. The checks and balances built into the Constitution. One set of rules for everyone. Let me say this again because it's a point that I will emphatically prove to you throughout this series. At this point, the most pivotal dividing line right now is between those who are in on the corruption and those who are not. And 99.99% of the population is not in on the corruption. This is something that I will lay out for you in deep detail. We need to overcome all this divide and conquer madness. Here's where we are coming from. Here's the baseline, common ground we were all coming from and aiming toward. We all want to live in a safe community, in a healthy environment that gives our families the opportunity to fulfill our potential, whatever it may be. That is the baseline, the common ground we all have here. We all want a safe, healthy community that gives our families the ability to live peaceful and healthy lives. That's the perspective that I'm coming from here. I'm not an ideologue. I'm not partisan in any way. My track record backs that up. If you aren't familiar with my work through the years, as you will see and hear throughout this series, the proof is in the pudding. I work hard to avoid groupthink and confirmation bias, which is not an easy thing to do at all. It takes eternal vigilance. Confirmation bias and groupthink are always a lurking threat. It takes serious psychological bandwidth to defend against, to discipline yourself against confirmation bias and groupthink. Any serious, independent, critical thinking individual knows that. The second you get a little lazy in your thinking, confirmation bias and groupthink will kick in and take over. I think groupthink is the last refuge of the beaten mind. Groupthink and partisanship are two sides of the same coin. Groupthink and partisanship are the left and right hemispheres of the same beaten mind. And I've always appreciated the wisdom from the American transcendentalists, from people like Thoreau and Emerson. Wisdom that says a political party is designed to save people from the vexation of thought. Ain't that the truth? You don't want to outsource your thoughts to either one of these political parties. That's for damn sure. It's not your granddaddy's Republicans and it's not your mommy's Democrats. That's for sure. These political parties have been co-opted and bought out by global imperial forces. Straight up. No joke. The second you outsource your thoughts to partisanship or groupthink now, it's all a downward spiral from there. You need to be an eternally vigilant truth warrior to battle against groupthink. Get a little lazy in your thinking. If you don't do your homework, if you don't stay sharp, you will quickly devolve into a group thinking robot, into a divide and conquer bot. You'll turn into an unwitting group thinking imperial stormtrooper, a useful idiot hell-bent on your own demise. One thing that I've realized, beyond a shadow of doubt, when it comes to systemic corruption, both political parties, the Republicans and the Democrats, are up to their eyes in systemic corruption. As I will point out throughout this series, when it comes to systemic corruption, it's a bipartisan affair. Once you understand the fundamental dynamics of systemic corruption, you'll see how the narrow range of debate between Republican talking points and Democratic talking points is juvenile. It's absurd. It's amateur hour at best. TV and radio news has become cartoonish. It's romper room propaganda. It's a national embarrassment, as are both political parties. The primary problem is that the mainstream media is a divide and conquer distraction machine. Everyone is all caught up in mainstream divide and conquer narratives, lost out to sea in dicey, divisive waters. People are saturated in Republican versus Democratic talking points. It's all a distraction. There is shallow, divisive rhetoric being spewed all over the place, left and right. It's got everyone all hyped up. Everyone is all worked up, fired up, pissed off. Emotionally driven, divisive rhetoric is short-circuiting the neocortex. It's the relentless overstimulation of the reptilian brain complex. Short-circuiting critical thought, atrophy of the critical faculties, the amputation of critical thinking skills via relentless, repetitive, divisive rhetoric. The narrow, limited spectrum of thinkable thought that is the Republican versus Democratic talking points has contracted everyone's awareness. They have contracted consciousness into consciousness concentration camps, group thinking nonsense narratives. Everyone is all caught up in divide and conquer narratives. That's what we need to get past urgently. All this divide and conquer nonsense is destroying us. We are super saturated in shallow, divisive rhetoric. We need to get past all this divide and conquer propaganda. When your country is under attack, when your country is being systemically destroyed, fighting amongst each other is not the way to go, people. When your country is being systemically destroyed, fighting amongst each other is not the way to go. It is imperial divide and conquer plunder. Imperial divide and conquer 101, people. Check yourself. Check for yourself. That's the thing about truth. The more you look into it, the brighter it gets. You just have to point people in the general direction of truth. Just point to the general vicinity. And then aware people will take it from there. Once deeper truth is accurately articulated, nature will take its course. Truth resonates naturally. Don't underestimate the power of truth. The light of truth shines brighter the more you look into it. Discovering it first, though, digging deep below all the bullshit and uncovering the truth is the hardest part. But once you uncover the truth, the Holy Grail, if it is seriously the truth, you just have to speak the truth. And if it's the real deal, it will grow louder and louder. Truth stands hand in hand all over the world, and one shock of recognition runs the whole circle round. Truth resonates. Truth naturally resonates. The truth can handle the pressure, can handle the scrutiny. As a wise person once said, the truth is like a lion. You don't have to defend it. Let it loose, it'll defend itself. Now, of course, you have to uncover it first, though. You have to dig deep to dig it up. Lots of heavy lifting, for sure. But once you can accurately articulate the truth, one shock of recognition runs the whole circle round. Truth resonates. Truth naturally resonates. So that being said, a main theme here is overcoming divide and conquer propaganda to unite and defend the American people against predatory global interests, global imperial interests. That's where the real action is at. Overcoming divide and conquer propaganda to unite and defend the American people against predatory global interests. Overcoming divide and conquer propaganda to unite and defend the American people against predatory global imperial interests. That's where the real action is at. The old global imperial centralizing force that is consolidating power, wealth, and resources into fewer and fewer hands, which makes the masses dependent upon this large, corrupted, centralized system for the basic necessities of life, for ever increasing debt. Here's some basic imperial mathematics for you. 2 plus 2 equals ever increasing debt. Debt is the imperial global centralizing system's key weapon. Debt is the sword, and divide and conquer propaganda is the shield. Imperialism 101. Make the local population fight amongst themselves while you rob the nation blind and bury everyone in debt. Ever increasing debt. It's an age-old oppressive tactic. It's an age-old tale to tell. Come gather round, people, from wherever you roam, and admit that the debt around you has grown. You better start swimming, or you'll sink like a stone. All right, we're getting carried away. Let's not get lost out to sea. Where were we? Oh yes, debt. An age-old tale to tell. An age-old oppressive tactic. Do you recall the biblical wisdom in the book of Proverbs that says, the borrower is slave to the lender? That age-old imperial strategy. Make the local population fight amongst themselves while you rob the nation blind and bury everyone in debt. And oh, what's that we see? A deep, direct correlation to present reality. We presently have all-time record-breaking national debt and all-time record-breaking state debt and all-time record-breaking household debt and all-time record-breaking personal debt. All-time record-breaking debt across the board. What do you know? Go figure. Welcome to the imperial debt death spiral. History repeats itself, coiling off into the future. That's the thing about age-old wisdom. That's the thing about the truth. Don't underestimate the power of truth. Truth resonates. Once spoken, once accurately articulated, logos, speaking truth to power, or more precisely, speaking truth is power. Boom. Truth bomb. Allegiance to the truth. That is the guidepost. That is the way through. These are divisive, dicey, debt-filled waters. But the fundamental rule when operating in chaos is to tell the truth. Truth is your guidepost. Truth is your sword and shield. Speak the truth. Accurately articulate what is presently unfolding as concisely as possible. Truth stands hand in hand all over the world, and one shock of recognition runs the whole circle round. Truth resonates. Truth naturally resonates. Don't underestimate the power of truth, people. As Thomas Jefferson once advised, enlighten the people generally, and tyranny and oppressions of the body and mind will vanish like evil spirits at the dawn of day. Once a critical mass understands how power operates on a global scale, once a critical mass understands the fundamental dynamics of the power that surrounds us in its latest guise, in its latest disguise, once a critical mass can see through its mask, the global imperial centralizing jig is up. The iron law of oligarchy, dominance, hierarchy, is a skin that we will shed. The metamorphosis is already underway. Calling all imaginal cells, who hears me, on the precipice of the abyss, an evolutionary leap is required. Let's positive feedback loop our way into the new paradigm. All right, I'm having a little fun with this now. We're getting all sorts of carried away, I guess. We don't want to get too carried away too quickly here. I was getting caught up in everything. We need to lay a solid foundation first. Discipline. Discipline, David. Discipline. We need to be methodical here, as methodical as possible. We need to do the deep digging and heavy lifting to set up a solid foundation of understanding, a well of wisdom that we can dip into. We will spend significant time exposing and dissecting divide and conquer narratives that are repetitiously forced down our throats. Divide and conquer narratives that are repetitiously forced upon our consciousness. It's repetition that influences most. It's what Madison Ave marketers, advertisers, PR experts, it's what propagandists have known all along. If you just keep up the exposure rate, people will be influenced. Repetition, it's all about repetition. Subconscious programming, repetition, it's all about repetition. Propaganda 101. Throughout this series, we are going to be able to see through divide and conquer narratives with ease. We are going to be able to see through them in vivid detail. We will dismantle the illusion pixel by pixel, the disintegration of the illusion. The illusion will disintegrate before our eyes. The degradation of the illusion. We are going to pixelate the illusion. We will break it down in vivid detail, bit by bit, piece by piece, brick by brick, pixel by pixel. It's time for some higher resolution reality, higher definition. We will render a higher resolution navigation system. That's what we need. A high resolution GPS that can help us navigate the power dynamics that surround us. Ultimately, what we're doing here, I want to provide you with a clear map of the power dynamics at play, the power dynamics surrounding us, a vivid map of the overall terrain. We'll survey the battlefield. We'll survey the scene. We'll survey the playing field. I want to provide you with a navigation system, a detailed, high-resolution navigation system of the fundamental power dynamics that surround us. A navigation system, a map of how power operates around us, so you can find your own way through it. So you can find your own way out, your own way to freedom, your own way to health, success, and abundance. This is where the political becomes personal. You can consider this a survival guide, a field manual to the power dynamics surrounding us. So you can survive, self-actualize, and thrive. Ultimately, this is about empowering you toward self-actualization. This is about empowering mass transformation via self-actualization. Empowering mass transformation via self-actualization. Self-actualization, that's the way out. That's the way to freedom. Once we can get an in-depth understanding of the fundamental power dynamics at play, we can then develop, hone, and apply our own unique skills in our own chosen way to overcome and transcend the present crisis. At this stage of evolution, at this phase in the process, there is now an ecosystem of transformation that anyone can tap into and flow with. There is now an ecosystem of transformation, an ecosystem of self-actualization that we can come into alignment and synergy with, which I will be fleshing out for you throughout this series. For all the major problems we are confronted by, for all the unprecedented crises we are facing, there are viable solutions. This is the main point. For all the major problems we face, there are viable solutions, multiple solutions at this point for every major problem. The blessing in disguise right now, corruption has gotten so bad. The challenges we face, governmental and economic challenges, environmental and health challenges, societal and cultural challenges. At this point, the challenges we face are so apparent and so blatant that we now have an in-depth understanding of them. That's the blessing in disguise. We now have a deep understanding of the fundamental core dynamics that are driving the major problems that we are confronted by. We have a deep understanding of the underlying root causes, and there are now viable solutions. That's what I'm going to be laying out in detail here with you. And to be clear, this isn't about telling people that there's only one particular way to live, or saying that these are the list of the exact things that you have to do. This isn't about that. This is a choose your own adventure. This is a choose your own solution adventure. How about that? I like that. This is a choose your own solution adventure. Now, we are going to do a lot of shadow work here. By shadow work, I mean diving deep into systemic corruption and societal problems. We are going to go deep into our collective shadow. Now, keep in mind, as a very wise person once said, it's always darkest just before the dawn. We are going to do a lot of shadow work here, But the motivation and reason why I'm doing this is because I am optimistic about the future. I want to make that clear up front. We are going to make the darkness conscious so we can effectively transcend it. The unseen enemy is always the most fearsome, right? We need to make the darkness conscious. We need to illuminate the obstacles, illuminate the shadows. We need to illuminate the shadows that be to effectively transcend them. Despite all the corruption and the serious problems we face, despite all the battles I've been fighting, I wouldn't be doing this right now if I didn't think that there was light at the end of the tunnel. There is much to be positive about. There is a bright future to look forward to and much to be grateful for. I want to make this clear from the beginning right now. Despite all the challenges and obstacles that I had to battle through, and will continue to battle through, I consider myself to be a hardcore optimist who sees many fixable problems. Once a critical mass knows where to focus their attention, they will be naturally inspired to focus their efforts and will change the game. We can fix it. We can create the change we need. That is what I truly believe. That is why I'm doing this recording right now with you. I'm considering this podcast a basic introduction and intro episode. I'm going to pre-record the first few episodes before anything is posted online. There'll be long format episodes like this one. And then moving forward on a consistent basis, I'll do shorter, more time-sensitive, news-based episodes, more topic, issue-specific episodes on what is presently unfolding, on the latest developments. For now, though, I want to lay the groundwork and cover the vital fundamentals first. Step by step, pixel by pixel. I'm pre-recording these first few hours so I can make sure to lay the foundation that needs to be set. We need to do the heavy lifting to set up a solid foundation of understanding, to put the conceptual framework in place. And from this base, we can then effectively confront challenges and obstacles as they unfold around us. Having a microphone in my face and being on camera is definitely outside my comfort zone. I'm used to working behind the scenes, investigating, researching, analyzing, and writing reports on systemic corruption and how power operates. I always avoided interviews as much as possible. And now I got all this going on. When your life gets turned upside down, staying in your comfort zone isn't exactly an option now, is it? Yeah, that's the thing. Look, I'm a little gun shy right now after everything I've been through. I'm battle weary. Every time I begin to put out information, I end up getting hacked. My life gets turned upside down. And I get all sorts of censorship and suppression online. My ability to make a living doing investigative journalism becomes real difficult, real fast, to say the least. That's why I'm pre-recording these first few hours before anything gets posted. Even with the help that I have now, which I'm very grateful for. Even with the help that I have now, I just don't know how long this is going to last, to be honest with you. This is an ever-evolving battle, no doubt. So I have to do everything I can to put out vital information by any communication means necessary. I'm decentralizing myself now as much as possible. across many sites, servers, platforms, and networks. I'm going to be kicking out vital info by every communication medium possible: audio, video, images, text, podcasts, as best as I can. I'm grateful for the help that I now have, and I'm grateful for any help that I can get. If you are one of the people who are tapped in enough to be listening to this right now, support of any kind is greatly appreciated. Whatever you feel inspired to do is much appreciated, because look, the Iron Curtain is coming down online now. The algorithmic curtain is descending over the internet now. The artificial intelligence, the AI algorithmic bots are no joke. They are editing reality in real time. The AI algobots are thought police on steroids. This is beyond Orwellian now. Seriously. The algorithmic curtain is descending upon our news feeds as we speak. They are editing reality in real time. The algorithmic curtain is descending upon our conscious awareness as we speak. The AI algobots are jamming our frequency. No joke. You see what I mean? You see what I mean? When you accurately articulate what is presently unfolding, you will sound like a crazy person. The AI algobots? Come on now. These are seriously surreal times. Can you hear Paul Revere's horse galloping? Did you get Paul Revere's notification? Ding, ding. The AI algobots are coming. Ding, ding. The AI algobots are coming. Oh, man. Surreal times, people. Surreal times. The globally corrupt imperial elite are in control of your social media feeds and Google search results. The AI algobots and psyops have infiltrated the entire internet. Technically, it's called full spectrum dominance. That's a real thing, an actual military strategy. Full spectrum dominance is no joke at all. AI algobots have infiltrated your mind. Just because you're paranoid doesn't mean that you're crazy. No joke. They harvest your personal information, your personal data, your online thought prints. They harvest every move you make with shocking precision and effectiveness. They can do it to entire populations now. With big data analytics, AI algorithms, and machine learning, there are many companies who have very advanced and detailed data points, in-depth personality profiles on everyone, on everything you do. It's called psychometrics. For real, psychometrics. That's what they call it. In-depth personality profiles, so they know exactly how to manipulate you. It sounds crazy, because it is crazy. The more you look into military spending, the crazier it gets. Big data companies, global intelligence agencies, and private military contractors have thousands of data points on every American, literally. Highly in-depth personality profiles with thousands of data points on every American, on everyone. I'll cover this topic in detail throughout the series as well. It's shocking. It's horrifying. The Fourth Amendment has been shredded. The Fourth Amendment has been rendered null and void. Modern surveillance tech has obliterated antiquated privacy laws. It's horrifying, especially if you are someone that the global power elite think can affect their power. If you're an investigative journalist who focuses on systemic corruption in a way that can unite the American people, if you can do that, you are targeted for all sorts of hacking. And with modern surveillance technology, it is too easy for powerful people to shut people up, shut people down, to turn people's lives upside down. It's far too easy these days. The power of surveillance technology is vastly underestimated when it comes to how real power operates today. I'll tell you that. The use of surveillance technology as a tool of control is commonplace now. Politicians all over the world, politicians all throughout the United States in particular, they're on lockdown now. The use of surveillance technology to manipulate, undermine, and control people is much more widespread now and much more commonplace now than people realize. Whether you are a politician, even a law enforcement investigator, an inspector general, a whistleblower, an activist, or journalist, if you can truly affect the power of the global power elite, you are targeted and very effectively and efficiently undermined and neutralized. If you are an investigative journalist who can focus on systemic corruption in a way that can pierce through the divide and conquer propaganda, if you can focus on systemic corruption in a way that can overcome divide and conquer partisanship and unite people across the political spectrum, the global power elite will target you and turn your life upside down pretty easily. And the ultimate goal is to limit your ability to make a living at doing that investigative journalism. This is what I've learned the hard way. You can consider this the AI algobot blues. I mean, I'm trying to make light of a dark, difficult situation here, people. If you can do real legit journalism in a way that informs people on the fundamentals of systemic corruption, informs people in a way that unites them instead of dividing them, if you can do that, the global imperial elite will target you and turn your life upside down. And the ultimate goal is to limit your ability to make a living at doing that journalism. That's the key objective. Make it impossible for anyone to do real full-time investigative journalism on systemic issues. The ultimate goal is to limit your ability to make a living at doing serious investigative journalism. That's what happens. So that's what we're up against here. This is why journalism is dead throughout the United States. And in the grand scheme of things, I'm just a little gnat. I'm a little gnat. A gadfly at best. A gadfly in the old Socratic sense, I suppose. So I'm pre-recording this series to make sure that I can say vital things that I think need to be said as the AI algobots are closing in. I'm running for the fences. I'm running for the fences here, people. There is just a ton of vital information that we have to share. And to be clear, All this vital information is publicly available information. This is really important for me to make this distinction and point this out up front. I do not in any way deal with classified information. I have no desire to even see classified information. I avoid it like the plague. You know, basically, classified information is entrapment at this point. I mean, the classification of information is a major issue. The classification of information has become a pivotal weak spot for the American people. The Constitution torching ability to wave the wand of national security to cover up corruption, that is devastating to the American people right now. As we know from people like the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Senator Grassley, has said, and Senator Wyden on the Senate Intelligence Committee, you know, people who have an understanding of the information that gets classified, they have consistently said that info is classified to cover up corruption. That's basically what it's all about. At this point, that's a major, huge issue. And I'll be covering this issue in detail with publicly available info. We don't need any classified info to report on it in an effective way. Between FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act, which just keeps getting weaker, by the way, but between FOIA and senators getting info declassified and all the publicly available government reports, Inspector General reports, Government Accountability Office reports, and then connecting dots from news reports, we have all the proof that we need to prove that the U.S. Constitution is being violated often. The U.S. Constitution is being destroyed. It's being torched. The checks and balances, the accountability mechanisms, the chain of accountability has been completely dismantled. And we know exactly how it is being done. We know the weak points. We know the loopholes well. We can describe the process in detail so people can understand it. And at this point, we don't need any classified info to do it. So my main point right now, bottom line, I don't deal in any kind of classified information. It's just too dangerous to begin with, and at this point, it is unnecessary. It's an entrapment play. At this point in the game, there is more than enough publicly available information to understand the real score. There is more than enough publicly available information to flesh out the inner workings of the global power dynamics that are at play around us right now. There is more than enough publicly available information to lay out how trillions of tax dollars have gone unaccounted for. There's more than enough publicly available information to demonstrate outrageous abuses of power. At this point in the game, at this point in the process, we just need people to understand the publicly available info first and foremost. Once they understand the publicly available info, the rest will take care of itself. We have more than enough evidence. So I want to make that 100% clear up front. All publicly available information here. If you know how to connect the dots, you can flesh out the whole global imperial power structure and how it operates. You can flesh it out efficiently and effectively. And you could be the judge of how well I'm going to do that. Because with these recordings I've done, I lay it all out as concisely as I can so people can understand the underlying systemic corruption in a way that will unite people. Again, at this point, the most pivotal dividing line is between those who are in on the corruption and those who are not. And 99.99% of the population is not in on the corruption. My hope is that I can do this in a way where a large enough number of people can vividly understand it so we can effectively unite and create the change that we need. If we can accurately articulate it in a way that a large number of people can understand, we can create the change that we need. Look, I'm running for the fences here. We've got to reach that critical mass tipping point. We need to drop a truth bomb in the heart of the Death Star. We need to drop a truth bomb onto the shadow of the global, imperial, centralizing dark side. We need to confront our collective shadow. We need to make the darkness conscious, illuminate the dark places, so we can transcend the shadow, so we can shed this skin. I do have some reservations about proceeding with all this. You really are a gnat compared to the powerful forces operating around us, operating around the world. At this point, I've traveled too far down the road to turn back now. I've passed the point of no return long ago. The boats have been burnt long ago. And I'm at this point now, even if I wanted to walk away, my conscience won't let me, really. To be honest with you, every time I try to retreat, every time I get hacked, every time my life gets turned upside down, when it becomes too difficult to make a living doing journalism, every time that happens, I have to retreat. I must retreat at those points when it's really bad. So I retreat, and when I do, no matter what, somehow, some way, I still end up spending all my time investigating and researching systemic corruption and how power operates. Even when I'm not publishing online, even when I can't publish online, I retreat into and refocus on more investigation and research. I just always keep sharpening the sword. This centripetal force has a life of its own now. It has a momentum beyond me. I'm at a point now where I can't sleep at night. When you have so much vital information and you don't proactively, consistently share it, it weighs on your conscience. It tears you apart. I get a divided soul. It weighs on your conscience heavily. You can't live with a divided soul. It's that old Albert Einstein quote that haunts me. Einstein said, "Those who have the privilege to know have the duty to act." That old Einstein haunts me. His words echo throughout my mind. Those who have the privilege to know have the duty to act. If you have vital info that you know can help people, you got to share it. You got to release it. Just let it go and fearlessly flow. We are confronted by unprecedented crises now, across the board, crisis after crisis. They just keep getting worse. Meanwhile, there are viable solutions. We have the solutions. We can fix things. We can significantly improve everyone's quality of life. It is time for innovations, existing innovations, which are being stifled. It is time for these innovations to be unleashed so they can reach a critical mass tipping point as efficiently as possible. We have a global centralizing system that is enforcing scarcity in areas where there no longer needs to be scarcity. We have a global centralizing system that is systemically burying everyone in debt. A global centralizing system that is consolidating wealth and resources to make the masses dependent on it for ever increasing debt. How many people have to be unnecessarily exploited and unnecessarily impoverished? How many people have to live lives of exploitation and spend their lives toiling in debt slavery before the existing innovations and viable solutions to our major problems can reach a critical mass tipping point? How many people have to die unnecessarily before known innovations can reach a critical mass? That's the question. That's the challenge. That is the task upon us here. And when you understand the fundamental dynamics in such detail, you have to share that info. You got to share that wisdom, even if you know there's going to be a difficult and incredibly challenging road. Those who have the privilege to know have the duty to act. I feel a profound sense of responsibility. I really do. It's very hard for people to acknowledge and comprehend the level of corruption and collapse that is closing in on us, let alone to inspire people to effectively confront it. There is so much corruption and short-sighted, suicidal greed. It's overwhelming. It's hard to focus on one thing. To even acknowledge it, to truly acknowledge it, causes you to question your reality in a deeply disturbing way. In a way that most people can't handle or tolerate. To truly acknowledge it causes you to deeply question your reality in a deeply disturbing way. The more traumatizing wider reality becomes, the more people indulge in their denial. People prefer comforting lies to disturbing truths. People prefer convenient, comforting lies to difficult, challenging truths. This is how good people end up on the wrong side of history. Never underestimate people's ability to block out the evil that is growing around us. Those who have the privilege to know have the duty to act. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it is our responsibility to solve these problems. It doesn't matter whose fault it is. It is our responsibility to solve these problems. Like it or not, there is no avoiding the consequences. The front lines are everywhere. To not take bold action now is a grotesque abdication of responsibility. Responsibility to our nation. Responsibility to our families. Responsibility to our own future. And quite frankly, our responsibility to the future of life on this planet. Those who have the privilege to know have the duty to act. It's all the unnecessary suffering. That's what tears you apart. There's so much unnecessary suffering throughout the world. There's so much unnecessary exploitation, unnecessary death, unnecessary debt, unnecessary stress and anxiety. You know? People live under constant stress and anxiety these days. Unnecessary stress and anxiety. It's such a waste of human potential. No wonder suicide rates and depression rates have skyrocketed, as well as addiction, prescription medication rates. It all correlates to all-time record-breaking debt. There is so much unnecessary suffering throughout the world. With modern technology, with modern wealth, with present overall wealth and current technology, we can dramatically improve everyone's quality of life. There are 3 things that people vastly underestimate. Once you get a deep understanding of these 3 things, it's a game changer. It's a consciousness expanding paradigm shift. Here are the 3 things that people vastly underestimate. 1, how much wealth there presently is, which we'll be getting deep into. All 3 of these things that people vastly underestimate will be major areas of focus throughout the series. How much wealth there presently is the first one. 2, what is possible with modern technology. And 3, how psychologically conditioned we are. This is going to sound extreme. People vastly underestimate how psychologically conditioned, how mentally enslaved, how propagandized we all are. People vastly underestimate how psychologically manipulated we all are. Most people can't even imagine other ways of living. Most people can't even imagine what is presently possible. I'll be going real deep into psychological conditioning. People vastly underestimate how psychologically conditioned we all are. From the cradle to the grave. Skinner box bred in a token economy. I'll be going real deep into all this. To subdue the enemy without fighting is the highest skill. Sun Tzu said that in The Art of War. Propaganda and psychological operations. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. We are going to construct a psychological underground railroad. That's what we're going to do. It's a revolution of consciousness. It's an evolution of consciousness. That's what it is. An evolution of consciousness. That's what's happening. The enlightened individual is the path to freedom. The enlightened individual is the path to unity. As the paradoxical nature of it all reveals itself. An evolution of consciousness, that's what's happening. At the end of the day, we are all entangled particles living in mutualistic symbiosis. We are entangled particles living in mutualistic symbiosis. Therefore, the more you empower others, the more empowered you become. What you do to the web of life, you do to yourself. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. positive feedback loops. This is where science, religion, and philosophies that have lasted through the ages all coalesce and converge into alignment. We are entangled particles living in mutualistic symbiosis. Therefore, the more you empower others, the more empowered you become. Positive feedback loops. What you do to the web of life, you do to yourself. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. The enlightened individual is the path to unity. Time for an evolution of consciousness, mass transformation via self-actualization. Emancipate yourself. Time for a do-it-yourself, a DIY, decentralized uprising. None but ourselves. That's all we need. None but ourselves. I'm getting a little worked up again. It's true, though. I'll lay it all out for your skeptical mind. Much more to be said, of course. We'll be diving deeply into all three of these topics throughout this series, all significant areas that are vastly underestimated. 1, how much wealth there is. 2, what is possible with modern technology. It is easier to fish than it's ever been. I think one of the distinguishing characteristics, a distinction between the old paradigm and the new paradigm. The old paradigm wants you to become dependent on centralized systems. They want to give you fish. The new paradigm empowers you to be self-sufficient when it comes to the basic necessities of life. The new paradigm gives you the tools to fish. It makes you independent of the old paradigm. So that old wisdom about teaching people to fish instead of giving them fish, that's perfect for the distinction between the old paradigm and the new paradigm. And what is possible with modern technology now, it makes fishing easier than ever. And teaching people to fish. It's easier, because of modern technology, it's easier than ever to teach people to fish and to give them the tools so they can effectively fish. So the second underestimated thing is what is possible with modern technology. It's all about empowering self-actualization, self-determination, self-reliance, self-sufficiency. We don't need that old corrupted centralizing system anymore. We can become self-sufficient for the basic necessities of life at a very micro community level. I'm going to go deep into detail on all that. And then, as I was saying, the third thing is how psychologically conditioned we are. Once you understand any of those three topics, it is a consciousness expanding paradigm shift. And having such a deep understanding of this, having such a deep understanding of how this is all playing out, it weighs on my conscience heavily. It seriously does. It weighs on my conscience big time. It drives everything I do. Those who have the privilege to know have the duty to act. At this point, if I'm not doing everything I can to get vital info out, I can't sleep at night. I can't live with myself if I'm not sharing all this info. My conscience won't let me do anything else right now. You know, I do have hesitations, though, some fear. I'm battle weary. Look, I am battle weary, that is for sure. But it's like you have to speak up at this point. You have to act. You have to do what you can do. It's like, you know that wisdom from the Gospel of Thomas, that wise quote that says, if you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. That's so true. As above, so below. And the flip side of that wise quote is, if you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. There's some hardcore optimism for you. Don't die with your music still inside you. Don't die with your music still inside you. So yeah, I do have hesitations, though, admittedly. There is some fear lurking in the shadows. The shadows that be. The shadows that be. I'm battle weary, but I'm battle tested too. Full of hard fought, battle tested wisdom. I've been deep into the cave that most fear to enter. I've taken a long walk through the valley of the shadow of death. They say to fear no evil. Yeah, easier said than done. Watch out for PTSD, right? That's for sure. As above, so below, you know? They say to fear no evil. Yeah. It's like a wise warrior once said, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face. It's not how hard you can hit. It's how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. Right? A little Rocky wisdom hits hard. Life will beat you to your knees if you let it. That's the truth of it. It's how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. We need to keep moving forward. If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. MLK said that. We need to keep moving forward. That's the essence of life. Obstacles and adversity fuel our potential. Those who have the privilege to know have the duty to act. I do feel an intense sense of obligation and duty to do this. I seriously do. My whole life has led to this, one way or the other. Don't die with your music still inside you. Life is a brief burst of infinite possibility. We are all stars in the cosmic movie. Choose your role wisely. It's a hero's journey. Time to slay the dragon. Be aware. As above, so below. I am a hardcore optimist who sees many fixable problems. I do believe that there is a bright future to build toward, but alas, the hour is late for optimistic outcomes. The inevitable confrontation with the collective shadow is upon us. The inevitable confrontation with our collective unconscious. The shadow beckons. The cave we fear to enter holds the elixir that we seek. The archetypes are all there, made manifest. The archetypes are in alignment. The archetypal resonance is profound. In Carl Jung's work, I've learned to love Carl Jung. I'll reference him often. I have found that his work correlates very well with how power operates globally. Profound examples of as above, so below insights. Spine-tingling examples, hair-raising. So Jung says that you cannot evolve in a holistically healthy and sustainable way until the shadow is adequately confronted. At this stage of evolution, at this phase of existence, we are now in a Jungian confrontation with our collective shadow. In many ways, it is a confrontation with our collective unconscious. The old pre-existing dominance hierarchy, what I call the oligarchy dominance hierarchy, is an old, outdated paradigm. An old paradigm that has now outlived its usefulness. It is now a shadow that needs to be adequately confronted. It is a skin that must be shed in an evolutionary sense. I'll describe all this much further throughout this series. As Jung said, to become enlightened, to holistically evolve, we need to make the darkness conscious. We need to illuminate the shadow. We need to adequately confront the shadow. Unfortunately, based on what I've been able to decipher, it appears Jung was right. As above, so below. It's a Carl Jung-esque night sea journey. It's the maelstrom. On the precipice of the abyss, an evolutionary leap is required. Fear not, though. Fear not. The abyss appears dangerous only to those afraid to test their inner depths. The abyss is only the end for those who are frightened to reach down into their inner depths and give their best. Doing the best you can in challenging times is the ultimate evolutionary life force. Do the best you can. Persevere in service to the greater good. If you have an unbreakable faith, you will eventually experience a breakthrough. An unbreakable faith will lead to a breakthrough. This is where that Amor Fati mindset comes in, where those insightful Stoic philosophies emerge as actionable wisdom. Obstacles and adversity fuel our potential. The battle against an obstacle propels us to a new level of functioning. The extent of the battle determines the extent of the growth. We must learn to see the obstacle as a tool propelling growth. The obstacle is a catalyst. The obstacle is an evolutionary catalyst. The obstacle is a prerequisite requisite to our evolution. The obstacle is an evolutionary catalyst. That's the attitude to take. That's hardcore optimism right there. The obstacle is an evolutionary catalyst. That's the attitude that we need to transcend this crisis. These Stoic philosophies tie into Carl Jung's confrontation with the shadow as well. We can't be holistically healthy in a sustainable way until the shadow is adequately confronted. We can't just ignore our collective shadow, as we have been doing. It needs to be acknowledged. It needs to be exposed to the light and adequately dealt with. Here is another as above, so below insight from Jung. Only when we realize that part of ourselves which we have not seen or prefer not to see, can we proceed to question and find the sources from which it feeds and the basis on which it rests. That timely, deep wisdom derived from the depths of depth psychology was also discovered by another prominent psychologist, Ronald Lang. Lang sums up this point and our present overall crisis in the brilliant and aptly titled book, The Politics of Experience. I love that title. The Politics of Experience, indeed. In The Politics of Experience, Lang says, the range of what we think and do is limited by what we fail to notice. And because we fail to notice, there is little we can do to change until we notice how failing to notice shapes our thoughts and deeds. Indeed, the cave we fear to enter holds the treasure we seek. As Joseph Campbell summed up the myths of the ages and the hero's journey, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. As above, so below. It's always in that shadow. That's that thing that you fear the most, that thing that you would prefer to ignore, that blind spot that holds us back. We must illuminate the shadows, expose them to light, and once adequately confronted, we can then transcend them and evolve into a bright future of unprecedented abundance. As Carl Jung put it, the shadow, when it is realized, is the source of renewal, right? The obstacle propels us to a new level of functioning. The obstacle, the shadow, once realized, it becomes an evolutionary catalyst. The shadow, when it is realized, is the source of renewal. That was Carl Jung's deep insight from the depths of depth psychology, from the depths of the deep unconscious, from Jung's exploration into the deep collective unconscious. He returned with this wisdom. The shadow, when it is realized, is the source of renewal. The archetypes are all there, made manifest. They are in alignment. The archetypal resonance is profound. It's a hero's journey. It's time to slay the dragon. The cave we fear to enter holds the elixir that we seek. Obstacles and adversity fuel our potential. That's the mindset we need. That's the mindset we need as we begin to embark on our hero's journey deep into the shadows that be. So much vital info, a wealth of wisdom to share. It's time to slay the dragon. Piece by piece, bit by bit, brick by brick, pixel by pixel, dismantling of the illusion. Shedding a skin, shifting a paradigm. Just when the caterpillar thought the world was ending, it turned into a butterfly. Obstacles and adversity fuel our potential. That's the mindset we need. I need to get into a flow. So much vital info, a wealth of wisdom to share. Just let it go and flow. Just let go and fearlessly flow. So much vital info, a wealth of wisdom to share. Don't overthink it. Don't overthink it. Just let go and fearlessly flow. Speak the truth. Transparently flow. Genuinely flow. With sincerity. Authentically. Just be yourself. So much vital info, a wealth of wisdom to share. Battle-tested wisdom. Just speak the truth. Just let go and fearlessly flow. It's a hero's journey. Time to slay the dragon. My mission is to accurately articulate what is presently unfolding as concisely as possible so a large number of people can understand it. My mission as a journalist and as a person trying to understand the world around us, my mission as a person trying to successfully navigate the world around us, to navigate the power dynamics that swirl around us, my mission is to accurately articulate what is presently unfolding as concisely as possible so we can understand it, so we can then take that info and apply it to our own life and get tangible results, positive, empowering, life-enhancing results. That's where the action is at, where the magic is at. Chaos magic. To dive deeply into the swirling chaos that surrounds us and to extract deeper meaning out of it. To accurately articulate what is presently unfolding. It takes eternal vigilance to get up on that wave, to ride the ever-evolving cutting edge of viable truth in search of useful, actionable wisdom. That's where the action is at, where the magic is at. To dive deeply into the ever-evolving, swirling chaos that surrounds us and extract useful, actionable wisdom out of it, to translate deeper truth back to you so you can then apply it to your own life, so it can give you a better understanding of your own situation, so you can more effectively deal with your own issues, so it can empower you and help you navigate the power dynamics that swirl around us, so we can positively affect them to get life-enhancing results so we can live meaningful and fulfilling lives. That's where the action is at. that old wisdom from Thomas Jefferson, which propelled me down this path to the present moment, to what we're doing right here, right now. Enlighten the people generally, and tyranny and oppressions of the body and mind will vanish like evil spirits at the dawn of day. Right? That's Carl Jung too. Expose the shadow to light. Right? Perhaps if we can accurately articulate the collective shadow as concisely as possible in a way that a large number of people can understand it, perhaps then we can make tyranny and oppressions vanish like evil spirits at the dawn of day. We can make tyranny and oppressions vanish like evil spirits at the dawn of a new paradigm. Perhaps then we can transcend this crisis nonviolently, without societal upheaval, and without violent conflicts, without mass casualties. Perhaps then we can transcend it and evolve into a new paradigm. That's it. Yes, let's do this. An evolution in consciousness. Yes, let's do this. A paradigm shifting expansion of consciousness. Let's dive deeply into the swirling chaos that surrounds us. The fundamental rule when operating in chaos is to tell the truth. Allegiance to the truth. That is the guidepost. That is the way through. Truth is our sword and shield. Let's slay the dragon. It's a hero's journey. Just transparently flow. So much vital info, a wealth of wisdom to share, serious, hard-fought, battle-tested wisdom. Just let it go and fearlessly flow. Just let it go and flow. Be here now. Where the magic is at. Be present. Be in the moment. Be present. Where the magic is at. Be here now. Got to seize the moment. Be here now. Gotta seize the moment. Carpe diem. Carpe diem.